Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. Mi nombre es Florencia, nací en Argentina e mi primeiro idioma é el espanhol. Aos 18 anos eu comecei a estudar português. Como base do espanhol, eu acho que o português não é muito difícil. Hoje em dia eu não pratico muito português, mas eu posso entender áudios ou vídeos e também posso falar. Après cela, j'ai étudié le français pendant de nombreuses années, mais je parle seulement un peu de français. Und jetzt lerne ich Deutsch. Es ist eine sehr schwere Sprache, aber ich kann ein bisschen Deutsch sprechen. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, welcome. My name is Flor and I post new videos every single week talking about books, talking about working for yourself, talking about organizing your life, about New York City, about study tips, and about life in general. In today's video, and as you may have guessed from the video's title and from this introduction, we are going to be talking about learning a new language. If you watched the first video on this channel, that will be linked up here and also down below, where I share 5 facts about me, I mentioned that I speak 5 different languages. I speak some of them, I'd say pretty well, and some others not that well. The process for learning each of these languages was very different because I was different ages when learning each of them, and then with some of them I had a teacher or I went to a language institute, and in some other cases I did it on my own. But on this video I am going to be talking about learning a new language all by yourself for free online and from your home. I am going to be sharing 6 tips or 6 steps that I think might help you if you're trying to learn a new language. So if you like this idea, just keep on watching. The first step to learn a new language is to pick a language. And I know this sounds obvious and you might be thinking, yeah, of course, duh, but there's a reason why I put this one on the list. Learning a new language when you're a teenager or an adult is usually something that you choose to do, rather than something that is imposed to you when you're going to school, for example. So when you're trying to learn a new language, it is ideal if you have an objective behind it, if you have a goal, if you have a reason why you are picking this language in particular. For example, let's say you're gonna be working or studying in a different country and you do not know the language that people speak over there. So learning that language in advance, maybe a year in advance or a few months in advance, if you have the chance, could be a great idea. Or maybe you only speak one language, your native language, and you want to learn something new, you want to broaden your horizons. If that is the case, and if English is not your first language, learning English is such a great idea because it's a language that is widely spoken worldwide. And if English is your first language, you could go for Spanish, for French, for German, and I'm sure it's gonna be great and it's gonna be useful if you choose to travel abroad. Or maybe you like listening to K-pop music or watching Korean dramas and you want to better understand what people are saying, what people are thinking. So if that is the case, you might choose to learn Korean because you have a personal motivation for that. One way or another, if you have a motivation, if you have a desire to learn a new language, a reason behind it, the process of learning is probably going to be much easier. The second step is to have an objective, to have a goal, and if possible, also a timeline. For example, do you want to learn German at a conversational level for your next trip? Or do you want to be able to read books in English? What is your main goal for the language you are trying to learn? And then how are you going to do that? How much time do you have? Is it really possible to reach your goal in the time you have? These are all questions that you should be asking yourself and that you should be able to also answer them as well. If you're not sure about the timeline for learning a language, you can always Google that, and I'm sure you're gonna find other people in your same situation that can help you with tips and with information on whether or not it is possible to learn certain things or certain phrases in a language in the amount of time you have. Knowing all of this before you actually start learning a new language is a really great idea. Now you have to get to studying, and studying is the third step. Now when it comes to studying, most languages have 6 different areas that you should focus on: reading, writing, listening, speaking, grammar, and vocabulary. Grammar and vocabulary sort of go across across all the other areas and are basic if you want to learn a new language and if you want to learn how this language works and how to put together a sentence, how to put together a phrase. So they should always be one of your main focus of study. But then depending on the language and depending on your goal that you establish on step number 2, you might decide to focus more on listening and speaking instead of reading and writing because you're planning an upcoming trip and you only want to be able to speak with locals and maybe get directions, or maybe ask for food at a restaurant, or maybe you are planning on studying somewhere else and you actually need to be able to write and to read in a different language. Or maybe you want to do a bit of everything, you don't have a set timeline and you want to just learn the language as you go. When doing this, there are certain resources that you should consider having. First of all, a notebook. Notebooks can be digital or they can be in paper, that is up to you, but you should have one. You should have a place where you take notes for all the things that come to this language you are learning. In my case, and when studying German, that is the language I am learning at the moment, I use a paper notebook because that works better for me. I prefer writing things instead of typing them down on a digital note, but every person has their own system, their own method, so pick the one that works better for you. Then the question is obviously, how are you going to follow lessons? How are you going to organize the process of learning this new language? It is ideal, of course, if you can follow a certain course or a certain app that guides you around the things that you should be learning as you are advancing and moving along the path of learning this new language. And then from that, you can add other things as well. And it is also great to have a go-to source for grammar and for vocabulary. As I mentioned in the title of this video and as I mentioned on the introduction, I will be only talking about free resources, free tools that you can use to learn a new language. And I am going to share everything I use to learn the language that I am learning at the moment, which is German, as I mentioned before. Although all the tools that I will be mentioning can be used for other languages as well. And of course, everything I will be mentioning from now on will be linked down below in the description box. And nothing I am saying is sponsored, by the way, just putting it out there. Everything I am recommending is just because I am using it and I think it's a great tool. But if any of these apps want to sponsor me, you can email me. First of all, my go-to app for learning a new language is Duolingo. I know some people love it, some people hate it. For me, I think it's a great tool and it's absolutely free and available for all cell phones. So I think that's amazing because it takes language learning to basically almost everyone in the world. And I also like that it has a web version where you can log in, sync your progress, and also take lessons in your computer, which sometimes I think is even better than taking them on your phone. Although I know Duolingo can only take you up to some point and you get to maybe the first 2 or 3 levels of a language, so you could never get to a very advanced level only using Duolingo. I still think it's a great starting point. Once you finish your course over there and once you feel like you have basically learned everything that the app has to offer, you can then move on to something else, but you will already have a great basic knowledge of the language. I like that it is an app that is very visual. When you're learning new vocabulary, you have images for the things you're learning, so that's pretty helpful. And it introduces new concepts, new vocabulary, new connections, all gradually. So you can start from the very, very bottom, from the very, very basic, like hello and goodbye and my name is, and then you go up from there. I know this is not an actual textbook and a proper course, but I think it's something that is really useful, really good, and pretty much everyone can use it. And I like that it also has a part of grammar for every lesson you learn. You can access it through the app, clicking in the tips section, but you can also access that on your computer, and actually the version on your computer has more information than the one on the app. So if you want to check the grammar of the lessons you're learning, I suggest you check the web version instead of the app. I have actually printed some of the pages from the grammar information on Duolingo and turned it into a sort of course book, and it has a lot of examples, a lot of great ideas, and it's easy, it's simple, but it gets the job done. Duolingo does have a paid version, but the content of the course does not change. The only thing that changes is that you have more lives in the app, so that allows you to make more mistakes because you don't lose your lives and you can keep on practicing and keep on improving, and you can take some tests. so you know where in the language you're standing, how much you know of that language. But I think the free version does a great job and I absolutely recommend it. The second tool I am using to learn German that is more focused on speaking and on listening is called Coffee Break Languages. The one I'm using, of course, is called Coffee Break German, but I know they have Coffee Break French, Coffee Break Spanish, Coffee Break English, and I think Coffee Break Swedish, and maybe another one I'm not remembering at the moment. This is originally a podcast that you can listen on Spotify or wherever you get your podcast. I found it on Spotify. The structure of this podcast of Coffee Break is that there's a person that is a native speaker of the language or a person that has a really great advanced knowledge of the language, and that person has the role of the teacher, and then there's another person that is in the role of the student, of the person that's learning the new language. So you can follow along as the teacher explains to the student different ideas and new concepts. And of course, here you start from the most basic things as well, like saying your own name or saying where you're from, and then you move on from there. This podcast is mainly focused on communicating, so they teach you how to ask for food at a restaurant, how to ask for directions when you're on the street, or maybe how to book a hotel. But as you learn those things and those phrases, you also learn grammar and you also learn vocabulary, so that is also amazing. And another great thing about this program, about this show, is that they have 2 additional people working on this process of language learning. One of them is a grammar guru that, as you move on with the lessons and you learn new things, focuses on the grammar side of things, on how words are constructed or how plurals are constructed and how you conjugate verbs, for example. And then you also have a cultural correspondent that tells you things about the countries where the language you're learning is spoken. For example, in my case that I'm learning German, they share facts and information about Germany, about Switzerland, about Austria. And I think learning more things about the countries where the language you're learning is spoken is also a great idea. If you want, they do have a paid version on their site. It's called Radiolingua Network. And what I like about the paid version is that when they are speaking and they are saying new phrases or new vocabulary, new words, you see them on the screen. So if you also want to learn how a language is written apart from how it is spoken, I think this is a useful tool. Overall, I think it's a great idea. This made me sort of like fall in love with the process of learning German, so I absolutely recommend it. And another great tool I want to recommend, and this time for vocabulary learning, is called Anki. Anki is a software you can use on your computer, on your Mac, Windows, Linux, Android phone, and iPhone. The version for iPhone is actually paid. It's the only one that's paid, but honestly, I don't recommend paying for that because you can use it for free on your computer, and I think the whole program is better on a computer rather than on a phone. So, what's Anki and how does it work in case you haven't heard about it? This is a program that helps you learn a new language, or basically anything, not only a new language, through flashcards and through repetition. Flashcards are cards that some people actually use to learn new concepts, where on one side of the card you write, for example, a new word, on the other side you write the meaning. So when you're learning this new language, you can see the new word and see if you can remember the meaning of the word before turning on the other side of the card and seeing what this word actually means. Well, Anki takes that but to a digital program and to your computer. So every day you open the app and you have a study session. You can personalize this study session to get, for example, 10 new words every day, or 15 or 20 or 30 words every new day. So you get these new cards with new vocabulary, but at the same time you review the cards that you learned the day before, the week before, the month before. The app works with you, so when a new word pops into the screen, you have to select whether you remember it correctly or you don't remember it, or it's like somewhere in between that. So depending on how much you remember this word, how good you actually know this word, this new piece of vocabulary, the app is going to show it sooner rather than later, or the other way around. This is better than actual paper flashcards because being a computer and being something that is programmed, it can learn which words are actually easy for you, which ones are difficult, and they choose, of course, to show you the difficult ones more frequently, and the ones that are easier for you, you see them maybe once every month or once every 2 months, because you're not going to forget those, but you need to focus on the ones that are harder to remember. The app is a bit difficult to use at first, I'm not gonna lie here. It's like a learning curve, but once you get the hang of it, it's pretty straightforward, pretty easy, and pretty basic. You have to go to the site, it will be linked down below. You download the app, and then you have to download a set of cards as well. In my case, I downloaded the deck of cards for German for level A1, which is the first level, for the Goethe Institute, which is a very well-known German institute. So that includes all the words that this institute in particular considers that you need to learn, that you need to know in order to graduate from level A1. But if you're learning a different language, you are going to find a deck of cards for that language as well. And you can also use Anki for basically any other topic you're learning. I will be linking down below the YouTube video that Anki themselves have uploaded, where you can learn how to download a deck and how to actually install it in the app you have on your computer. If you have the habit of opening Anki and practicing every single day, I think it's a great tool to build up your vocabulary. These are the top 3 tools I use for learning German. They are all free, as I mentioned, and you can learn on your own, at your own pace, and you only need an internet connection. There are other apps I also have on my phone and that I've used before to learn German, but I don't like them as much as Duolingo, but I am going to mention them as well, because maybe you've never heard of them, or maybe you want to give them a try and maybe they work better for you. I've tried Babel, Busuu, Rosetta Stone, Memrise, and Drops. All of them are free and they also have a paid version. As I said before, the names and links of everything I am mentioning in this video, and especially in this tools section, will be linked down below in the description box. So if you want to go ahead and check out any of these apps, of these tools and podcasts, you can go ahead, click the links down below. And step number 4 has to do with routines or schedules. If you're learning a new language online by yourself and at your own pace, it is very important to have self-discipline, in that you set apart certain times a day or certain times a week to actually learn this new language. Although some apps like Duolingo claim that you can learn a new language with as little as 5 minutes per day, I do recommend that you set aside at least 30 minutes to an hour every single day if you want to learn a new language. If you can set, for example, 30 minutes a day, Monday through Friday, to learn a new language, you could use 10 of those minutes to, for example, learn Duolingo, and then the remaining 20 minutes, for example, to listen to an episode of Copy Break Languages. Or maybe some other days you can use Anki for the whole 30 minutes and learn some new words. Or you can do your own combination of these tools or other free tools that you might be using. If you cannot set aside a certain amount of minutes or hours per day to learn a new language, I suggest that you set aside at least 1 or 2 days per week and you study for maybe 1, 2, or 3 hours at a time. To be honest, the amount of time and dedication you put into a new language is going to determine how much you learn of that language, how fast you learn that language, how good you become at that language. In the end, it's all up to you. Now, with that being said, we're moving on to step number 5, which is some extra ideas you can use in order to learn a new language. One thing you can do is that you can change the language on your phone. You can go into the settings of your phone and change it to the language you're learning. You probably already know all the buttons in your phone, all the things you use, where they are, how to do everything with your phone. So changing it to the language you're learning is going to help you learn maybe new vocabulary or new ways of saying certain things. Another great idea is to watch TV shows or movies in the language you're learning. The great thing about this is that if you have only a basic knowledge of the language, you can use the original audio in the language you're learning and you can use the subtitles in your own language. And as you move forward and as you progress and you feel like you can actually better understand what people are saying on this TV show or movie, you can use the subtitles in that same language, in your target language. Another great thing is to listen to music in the language you're learning. Maybe you can understand some of it, but if you cannot understand anything at all, you can always Google the lyrics and then listen to the song and follow along with the lyrics. I assure you that listening to music in your target language is going to help you learn a lot of new vocabulary you probably would not learn otherwise. Another idea is to follow people on social media. And when I mean people that speak the language you're trying to learn. If you see them writing tweets in this language or maybe write Instagram posts, you can always use the button that says See Translation that both Twitter and Instagram have, and you can see the translation for whatever this person has written in your language. If you have moved a bit forward in the language, you can also listen to YouTube videos. And of course, if you need, you can put the captions in your language or in the language this person is speaking and try to see if you catch up some words or some phrases. And once you have advanced a bit more in the language you're learning, I recommend you take up on books and podcasts. I say this as the last step or last idea because if you're reading a book and you do not have a great knowledge of the language, it's going to be hard to follow along to understand the main idea of the book if you're reaching out for a dictionary every few words. The same with a podcast. If you have to pause it and try to understand what they're actually saying, saying it might be hard. But if you do have a good knowledge of the language, books and podcasts are great resources to keep on learning and to keep on building your vocabulary and your grammar. And the sixth and final tool that I wanted to recommend is that you track your progress. It is very important to have the resources, the tools, the schedule, and to be consistent. But if you do not track your progress, you're probably not going to be able to see how far you've come. And being able to see how far you've come is actually going to motivate you to move even further. You can use a habit tracker and you can write down there with a cross or a tick every day you actually study this new language, and seeing all these crosses and all these days of the month is going to motivate you. You can also take free online tests to see how you're moving forward, how you're advancing, and how much of a percentage of the language you're learning you actually know. Well, this was a long video for sure, but I hope you liked it, I hope you enjoyed it, and above all, I hope it was useful if you're trying to learn a new language by yourself at your own pace and for free. If you have any free apps or free resources or free tools you use to learn a new language that I have not mentioned in this video, please do leave them in the comments down below so this can help everyone watching this video. And if you like this video, of course, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed already, activate the bell notifications to be notified of every new video I upload, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye! Tschüss! Au revoir! Ciao!